6 o'clock, and with that, we will do, we will call the meeting in order. Jackie, can we please start with the roll call?
Amanda Harness. Here. Fred Davis. Here. Steve Byers. Here. Ariel Owens. Present. Christopher Boyce.
Here.
Daisy Ramirez.
Present.
Ante Bynum. Jenna Zimmerman.
All right, next item, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the next item is public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board shall complete a request card prior to the start of the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Criticism of individuals is not in order. Jackie, do we have any comments?
Just in case my old eyes.
Never know. Right, thank you. All right, next item is board correspondence. Do you have any board correspondence?
Not exactly related to the school district, but I got to go on a mission trip last week with students from DeKalb and Sycamore High School. And I just kind of wanted to throw it out there that not only are our students doing things academically, athletically, and in the arts, but just to kind of throw out there that, you know, even during the summer when they could be lounging at home, going to the pool, we still have students in our community that we are imbuing with that heart of service that want to go out there and take care of other people. I just think that's something to really highlight, that we've got that in our community even during the summer.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Any other updates? No. Last week I did attend the parent handbook committee meeting, and today Dr. Larson and Fred they're gonna be presenting, right, the updates. So we will be hearing from them later today. So thank you for the work that went into that as well. Student board correspondence. Jenna is not here, but do you have anything for her?
Nothing big. I was just gonna say that her and I got some meetings scheduled for the rest of the semester and upcoming, so we can stay updated on what they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Ari, for that. And thank you again for the work that you did with them. All right, for the next item is consent agenda. But before we move on to consent agenda or reading the consent agenda item, I would like to make a motion to remove John Bersinski's from the personnel report. Is there a second?
It's Josh.
Josh, I apologize.
I will second.
Josh, I apologize. It's Josh. Jackie, I
Sorry.
misread your handwriting. Josh. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Roll call?
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Steve Byers.
Yes.
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Christopher Boyce.
Yes.
Daisy Ramirez.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Now consent agenda. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items 5B through 5I as attached. Board minutes 7/2/24, personnel action items, payroll for June, purchase order requisitions, financial reports, accounts payable for July, City of DeKalb DHS home football game agreement 2024 through 2027, and employment contract for DHS assistant principal. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Fred Davis.
Abstain.
Steve Byers.
Yes.
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Christopher Boyce.
Yes.
Daisy Ramirez.
Yes.
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, old business. It is Grand Canyon University, Illinois Field Placement Affiliation Agreement. This is an action item. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the field placement agreement with Grand Canyon University.
So moved.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Roll call?
Steve Byers.
Yes.
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Christopher Boyce.
Yes.
Daisy Ramirez.
Yes.
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Item B, thank you for that. Item B, Northern Illinois University Affiliation Agreement. This is an action item. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the field placement agreement with Northern Illinois University. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Christopher Boyce.
Yes.
Daisy Ramirez.
Yes.
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Steve Byers.
Yes.
Thank you. Item C, MOU, University of Chicago Network for College Success, DHS. This is an action item. Excuse me. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve this MOU with UChicago Network Network for College Success. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Christopher Boyce.
Yes.
Daisy Ramirez.
Yes.
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
Fred Davis. Steve Byers.
Yes.
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Thank you. Future elementary school business. Do we have any future elementary school updates? I see the pictures.
You just some really good pictures. I love to share the progress at the elementary. And it's really, there's been a lot of changes just in the last couple of weeks. Every week I go there on Tuesday at a minimum for construction meetings, but usually I get over there several other times throughout the week. But I wanted to show this. This is again the storm shelter and gymnasium. And what I kind of wanted to point out here was the fact that the entryway has started into the main entrance. So that's that structure you see right there. This is the wings that are being started for second, third, fourth, and fifth grade wings. This is our second and third grade wing, and if you notice this little edge around here is that innovation pod, which will be on the outside of those classrooms, so there'll be a breakout area for our staff and students to utilize. So that's just a foundation is there, the walls aren't in that area. Same thing over here, this is the fourth and fifth grade wing that's already started. And then last, this is just that pass-through area between the two wings, where there'll be several, some other classes and offices that are stationed there. And then I love to see this view, I don't know why, but I pull up on Garden Road and it's all fenced off right there where it dead ends. And I just love to see the progress from this distance, because it really kind of, again, changing every single week. It's really nice to be able to see that change happening, so. Just wanted to pass it along.
Well, thank you for that.
I'd like to also add something on the human resource side. We have had conversations with Maurice McDavid, the new principal, and we're going to be staving off the selection of an assistant principal for a while. First and foremost is that we want to make sure that he's acclimated appropriately, and then once we've done that, then he can make a more appropriate decision on the selection of an assistant principal. So at this time, we won't be searching for that. HR will post that position at a later date. We'll let you all know when that will be.
Thank you. Any questions? Alright. Thank you for that update. All right, new business. Item A, DeKalb County Area School District's County School Facility Aggregation Tax, brought to us forth by Mr. Amir Doka.
Yeah, I want to introduce Bob Lewis from PMA Public Finance Division. He is coming in to provide information and a presentation on county school facility occupation tax.
I'm sorry, before we move into that, I just want to give some context. The school districts across this county are interested in having the 1% or penny tax, as they call it, to be able to support facilities and payment of debt across the county. Steve Wilder, the superintendent over at Sycamore, is actually taking the lead on this and has requested that his colleagues, including us here, would support. As we take a look at what we can, how this might benefit the district, where we wanted to make sure that the board and our community understood what it really means as far as the 1% or the penny tax. So we've opted to have PMA do the presentation for us, and that way any technical questions that need to be asked or concerns that we may have, he will be able to answer them more clearly. And then we will share information in regards to the district at a later time. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me here tonight. Thank you. My goal here is to just educate you on this tax. And as Amir mentioned, I represent PMA's Public Finance Department. And also just a little bit more about my background. I've been doing public finance work for 27 years, most of those years at PMA. Also, I'm from the area. I grew up 10 miles south of here in Waterman, Illinois. In fact, I used to come here when this was an Eagle grocery store. So that's how long I've, not to date myself, but. So let's begin with sales tax overview. So the county school facility occupation tax, which I'll just call it the sales tax for the balance of this presentation, is an option that all counties in the state, all the school districts by county in the state have the ability to put before the voters to see if they wanted to approve it as a new tax to fund school facility needs. Cook County is the only county in the state where the schools there don't even have that as an option to put before their voters. The law has been around for almost 2 decades now. It was passed in October of 2007. And was modeled off a law that was similar in Iowa that was done on a county by county basis to eventually every county approved it in Iowa, and it's now just collected as a statewide tax. Under the law, the tax can be implemented in 0.25% increments up to a full 1%. To date, every county has done it at the full 1% with the exception of Peoria County, it's at 0.5%. So here's a map of all 102 counties in the state, and those that are shaded green are ones where the tax has been approved. Those that are shaded gray have attempted the tax at least once, and it was voted down. And those that are shaded white have never attempted a vote to implement the tax. Most counties that have it approved has taken more than one time. There's another version of this map that's more detailed. It shows you all the attempts each county has made, and most of them is twice. There's some that have tried 5 or 6 times to get it passed, and I think one of those is some have gotten it passed with many attempts, and there's at least a couple of them that have tried it many times and never got it passed. Most recently, in the spring, there's 3 counties that attempted this, and that includes Ogle, Ford, and I forget the third one now, but all 3 of those failed. It was Ogle's second attempt, I point that out just because it's a neighbor to your county. And in the Coward County areas, there's several Coward counties that are having these similar discussions now. The school districts, or I should say, in those counties are having discussions, Will, McHenry, Kane. And the only Coward County that has attempted it is Kendall County, and that was a few years ago, and it failed pretty overwhelmingly. I think it got in the 30% range, but that's a good example. Later on, I'll talk in the presentation, if the schools in the county want to do it, they really have to go in it together. There has to be agreement that having a chance of success. Kendall County is an example where Oswego put it, because they're so large, they put it on the ballot by themselves, and they didn't really have the support of all the school districts in the state, so it really had little chance of being successful. So what purchases are affected by the sales tax? So the sales tax base includes many of the things that you would buy in a department store, except for those items that are listed there. When you think about a lot of those items that are included, they're big ticket items, because the tax is designed to discourage tax avoidance, because that's always one of the concerns. If you have one county approves a tax and it's on big ticket items, people will drive to avoid paying that tax. So car dealerships and things of that nature would be concerned about implementing another sales tax and how that may disadvantage them in competition with neighboring dealers in other counties. And then you see boats, RVs, mobile homes as example. Unprepared food, it doesn't apply to this. In fact, under the new law, and you may be aware that the state repealed the 1% tax on unprepared food. So most of the state now doesn't even have that tax. Individual cities can choose to put it back on, but the vast majority of the state doesn't have that tax anymore. So the same with this tax, it wouldn't apply to unprepared food. One of the questions we've had a lot of times in the presentations, what's unprepared food versus prepared? Well, when you go to the grocery store and you grab one of those rotisserie chickens or some of those soups that are there ready to go, those are probably considered prepared food. Unprepared would be things that you gotta buy off the shelf and take home and cook yourself. Farm equipment and parts, farm inputs, those are very important in a lot of the rural counties across the state is how is that gonna impact the cost of doing agriculture? So those are excluded from the tax. And of course, services are not taxed because no sales tax applies to services across the state. So if you go into a department store and you buy clothing, or if you buy a 2x4, you're gonna pay the tax. If you buy unprepared food and those other items, you won't pay the tax. Now, an interesting data point that we now have for DeKalb County is important in that, well, who would pay the tax within the county? Well, it's anybody who buys something at a store in the county, regardless of where they live. It's not based upon where you live. And one of the data points that's been important in counties where they've had this approved successfully is, well, what percent of the tax would be paid by people that don't even have a permanent residence within our county? And for you, that's a pretty high percentage that is considered a non-resident that pays your sales tax. For you, the study showed that 42% of non-permanent residents pay sales taxes within the county. Well, that makes a lot of sense because you have a big university in your backyard with a lot of non-permanent residents coming here. So if this tax were imposed, you'd have a lot of people that don't have students, aren't paying for schools, paying towards your facilities. Okay, so how much would the tax be? So by district, so here are all the districts that are in DeKalb County or have a sliver in DeKalb County. You know, you have a lot of districts that just have a small portion within the county. At the bottom, you see the largest school districts, Sycamore, for example. You know, if DeKalb and Sycamore were both to vote to approve this, put this on the ballot, by yourself, it would go on the ballot whether or not all the other schools supported you. Now, if you're gonna have success, you want the vast majority of school districts in the county to support it, if that's the way that the school districts in the county decide to go. Well, how do we come up with these calculations? We take the total enrollment by district, we get that number by ISB, and then the amount that's allocated to each school district is based upon your enrollment in the county. So for your case, in your case, all your enrollment's in DeKalb County. But if you pick out, we pick on Sandwich, you know, it's in 3 counties, I believe, and we estimate roughly half their enrollment is in DeKalb County. Well, the state doesn't keep track of enrollment by county, so to come up with a realistic estimate, what we do is we use the percentage of the EAV of that district that's in DeKalb County and use that as a proxy. Later on, if the schools want to proceed with this, the ROE would probably want the actual data from you, because the ROE, you'll see on the later side, actually has to certify that the threshold has been met to put it on the ballot. So then we get, when you do all the math then, you see that the estimate countywide, the full 1% was implemented, would be about $10.5 million of sales tax revenue for school facility purposes. Our estimate is your share of that would be about $4.8 million. Now, a natural question might be, well, where do you get these estimates from? Because the tax currently doesn't exist. Well, there is one countywide tax across the state in every county, and that's that 0.25%. So the baseline sales tax in every county, every municipality, whether anything else is added, is 6.25%. Well, that 0.25% of the 6.25% goes to the county. So we know a countywide tax set. And now that applies to all purchases except food, unprepared food and sales, or excuse me, unprepared food and services. So the Illinois Department of Revenue, though, they have the details, so they're able to pull out those other items like cars and things that the 0.25% applies to, that this tax wouldn't. And then they send us a letter to us with their estimate. They take that amount, because it's 0.25%, and multiply it by 4. So that's where we come up with the $10.4 million. So it's a pretty reliable calculation based off the information provided by the Illinois Department of Revenue. So in other counties, this is more important, or for other school districts, it's more important. Like if I would make this presentation to Sandwich, what if my district is more in one county? You might be interested though, just because, you know, that impacts your share of the revenue. But a district that's in more than one county only receives revenue for students that live within the county. It's not where they go to school. So if, for example, Sandwich had a school that was in LaSalle County, and somebody lived in DeKalb County, they would get the revenue even though a student was attending school in LaSalle County. And then it's only for students that are in public schools. So private schools within your boundaries that have students, those students don't count towards this calculation. So what can the tax be used for? So most of the capital items that you would do in your buildings would qualify for use of this tax, including new school buildings, additions, technology infrastructure. I'm gonna pause on that one a moment. So technology, computers, this pad that I'm working off of, all these screens around here, you couldn't spend the money on that. But the infrastructure that's put into the buildings to bring the Wi-Fi here, or I guess it wouldn't be Wi-Fi, but hardwire stuff here, that type of infrastructure you could spend the money on. Definitely security and safety, planning, parking lots, durable equipment that is not movable. So all these desks that you're using here, you couldn't spend the sales tax on that because it's clearly movable because it has wheels. life safety, land acquisition, energy efficiency projects, and roof improvements and repairs. Those items that you couldn't spend it on include buses, buses are capital items, textbooks, most operating expenses, there's a star and I'll come back to that, computers, movable equipment, and detached furniture and fixtures. That star, what it's saying is, so you can't spend the money on teachers, teaching assistants, administration, but you can possibly spend it on school resource officers and mental health professionals. That was a tweak made to the legislation a few years ago. And it's an option, the question. I'll show you a little later on what that question looks like. So one of the items of concern always is, well, if the school district were to pass a sales tax, what does that do to the overall sales tax? Because you're not the only one that has a sales tax. The county has one, the city has one, cities, home rule cities oftentimes, and even non-home rule cities, you have a referendum tack on other taxes to the base rate. So you see on this list, many of the smaller communities, Genoa, Kirkland, Lee, I guess Waterman has a 1% tax now. Malta, they're at the base tax. They haven't added anything to it. In your community, you're at 8% right now, which is the same that you have in Sycamore. So if you were to pass that tax, obviously that's going to raise the tax that you pay in the city of DeKalb to as much as 9%. So a comparison then is to look at, okay, well, where is it at in surrounding communities that people may go to if the tax rate's higher in DeKalb? Well, if you were to go east of here to communities close to you, like Geneva, they're at 8%. So you'd be higher than that. Then you have others like Carpentersville, that would be at 9%. So you'd be the same. So there's a lot of higher tax rates already in King County. And again, keep in mind that the items that are taxed are ones normally people aren't going to drive and pay gas to avoid paying an extra $1 on a $100 purchase, for example. Okay, so how does it get on the ballot if the schools are in consensus to proceed? Well, it's the boards of education that represent 50% or more of the students. So it's not 50% of the boards of education within the county, it's 50% or more of the boards, it's the boards of education that represent 50% or more of the students. So that's why I said before, our estimate for your district is 45%. So if you and Genoa voted for it, it'd be on the ballot. If you and Sycamore voted for it, it'd be on the ballot. Whether or not you have consensus with the others. So that's how it's done. And then as the school districts individually would approve that, though they provide that resolution to the Regional Office of Education, and then the Regional Office of Education certifies the question to the county clerk. If you were doing your own referendum, you go directly to the county clerk. You bypass. It's because there's multiple districts that have to come together on the questions why you have to go to the ROE first, and then they notify the county. So here's the language in blue, and you can't deviate from this language. It's set forth in the statute, except for the portion that's in brackets. That's where you have an option. I'll go ahead and read it. Shall the retailer's occupation tax and service occupation tax, commonly referred to as the sales tax, be imposed in the name of the county at a rate of blank percent, and that's where you put a quarter, half, 3/4, or 1%, to be used exclusively for school facility purposes, and the bracketed language is up to the school districts to put into there. Now, all the schools have to agree on the bracketed language. You can have some do it and some not, and you all have to have the same percentage. You can't put a half in, Sycamore put in 3/4%, because it's a county-wide question. And then a majority of the voters in the county are then required to approve the tax. It's not a majority by district. So if, for example, Genoa Kingston's voters, if you looked at that collective, they voted it down, but the rest of the county approved it, Genoa Kingston's still gonna get the money, even though their school district as an entity maybe didn't have a majority of their voters support it. So if a referendum question is successful, the sales tax is imposed at the rate set forth in the question. And once the rate is imposed, those dollars start flowing about 4 months later, because you have somebody buy something at a gas station, they collect that, they have a certain amount of time that they send it down to the Illinois Department of Revenue. The Illinois Department of Revenue gets the money, and they got to divvy that sales tax up into all the various buckets. And once they determine that, they send it back, your portion back to the Regional Office of Education, who then has a certain period of time to determine, okay, they gotta put it into a bucket and divvy it up to the individual schools. And every year they have to do a new calculation because it's based off that year's enrollment. So if you're a school district that has enrollment growing faster than your peer districts within the county, you'll get a larger and larger percentage over time. And of course, the converse is true as well. If you're growing slower or seeing enrollment declines, you could see that sales tax, your share of sales tax decline. Now, it is possible to eliminate the sales tax once it's imposed. That's again via referendum. It is very challenging to do so because if any of the school districts within the county pledge that sales tax to repay a bond issue, for example, then the sales tax can't be eliminated because there's essentially a contract to pay the debt service on that bond. So you would have to, later in the future, if the school districts wanted to eliminate it via referendum, you then would have to have all the school districts not have any debt being repaid by the sales tax. So I already mentioned that the Department of Revenue collects the sales tax and holds it into a separate fund. And then they have 30 days to disperse it. And then once you get it, it has to go into a special fund called the Special School Facilities Occupation Tax Fund. Most school districts that have this, they just make that a subset of your capital projects fund. So capital projects fund 60, this might be a fund 61 within fund 60. And going back to my sandwich example, they can actually, even though the money is collected in DeKalb County, they could use that to do improvements at a school district in LaSalle County. You're not restricted to spend it on buildings within the county that you're collecting the tax. Okay, so what can it be used for? I've already used the debt service example. So you could use those dollars to, so if you have a larger project that you wanted to do, for like building a new building, it would take you years to accumulate enough sales tax to build that new building. So you could issue a bond, it's called an alternate revenue bond, or debt certificate. I think you've done both of those at some point in your history here. And you can repay those from the school facilities occupation tax. So that's one option. You can also do pay-as-you-go capital. As the money comes in, you use it for that year's summer projects. And you can also use it to retire bonds or abate debt service. And you can do any combination of those three. You don't have to choose one or the other. Now, the ballot question will not state what you're going to use it for. That's part of your if you proceed with this, it's part of your communication to your stakeholders of what you would use it for if they were to approve it. You can't advocate for it, but you can educate. And Belvedere schools, Boone County passed it on their second attempt. Belvedere is unique as far as my knowledge goes, in that they pledged to use 100% of the dollars to abate taxes on their bonds until the bonds were matured. And that was about 10 years ago. They have about 4 or 5 years left on their debt, and then that tax, then they can use it for something else if they choose to do so, because all their debt would be paid off. Okay, so funding options and considerations. If you were to build a new building that is complete with sales tax dollars, then you don't have to ask for permission to build that building at referendum. Like when you did the high school a few years ago, and you did that referendum for it, you had to ask within the question to build the high school, because the school code said if you're gonna build or acquire a new building that houses students, the voters had to approve that, even if you had other means to do it besides issuing bonds to pay for it as part of that ballot question. So that's what this exemption is saying. If you get the sales tax and you want to build a new building, you're exempted from the referendum requirement. Incidentally, the law was recently amended for the schools that as long as you certify that you increase pre-K or kindergarten capacity as a result of building or acquiring a new building, you also avoid the referendum requirement. And that's a recent change that the bill was just approved. Actually, it doesn't go into effect until September 1st. As of right now, the old rule still applies, but September 1st that becomes effective. I already mentioned that you could issue alternate bonds or debt certificates to repay by the sales tax. And you are probably aware of the concept called a debt service extension base. It's something that comes out of the tax cap that you can use to pay non-referendum bonds back as a school district. This concept of the DSEB and the sales tax are mutually exclusive. If this is approved, it doesn't impact your non-referendum borrowing ability and the debt service extension base. And lastly, because the sales tax, albeit we have very good solid information because of the $0.25 we know by the county, it is a new tax. So depending on the type of, if you were to do a debt obligation, depending on the type of obligation you did, you might have to do a feasibility study because there wouldn't be a known history of the tax. And that's to satisfy the law and also to satisfy your bond investors. So this is the same table that I had before in the white shaded area. And then on the right-hand side, this is new data. And it's meant to be a rule of thumb. It's not meant to be exactly precise. Is on the three purposes we talked about, issuing long-term bonds, abating debt service, and then doing pay-as-you-go capital. If you were to issue a bond from the $4.8 million and you finance it over 20 years, we estimate you can net about $47 million. If you went more years, you get more money. If you went fewer years, you get less money. And that would still leave some pay-as-you-go capital, because on the alternate revenue bonds, you can't bond up to the full amount. You'd leave about 20% of the revenue to still use for pay-as-you-go capital. Alternatively, your most recent bond levy was $1.7 million, which I believe you're already abating some of that. But you could use the sales tax to abate the rest of that, or substitute the sales tax for other dollars that you're currently abating with. And so if you abate the rest of that, that would knock off about 17 cents. So per every $100,000 of home value, that's about $46 of reduced taxes. And then you can see the data for your colleagues across the county. So it's good to talk about the risk about the debt if you were to pay it from the sales tax. Is the sales tax is commonly known as being a very economically sensitive tax. If you had a data here to show you, you would see every time there's a recession, if you go back to the Great Recession, you go back to the most recent one tied to COVID, you saw a decline in sales tax revenue. Pretty precipitous one back in 08, 09. And so if you had pledged that to repayment of some debt, you might have to come up with some other dollars to repay the debt if you also were in a recession, you saw sales taxes decline. And that's one of the reasons why the law suggests requires on alternate revenue bonds that you have a coverage factor in the event there's an economic downturn. And then I'm going to move on to the next slide. So PTEL, as you're aware, every year you have the opportunity to change your levy based off what CPI was the prior year. And that falls under PTEL, commonly known as the tax cap law. That and the sales tax are mutually exclusive as well. If you approve the sales tax, it doesn't automatically reduce your borrowing ability under PTEL. Now, a school district could choose to do that, but it's not legally required to have some sort of offset. And I already mentioned that the DSEB, debt service extension base, is not impacted by the sales tax. Okay, so what are the upcoming dates that would apply here? So if you want to put on the fall ballot, you know, the deadline's fast approaching, it's about a month out. And that school districts by that date would have to approve the resolution and then supply it to the regional superintendent, who would then have to certify it by the county by August 28th. And then the election would be on November 5th. But because the fall election is always so late in the calendar year, the Illinois Department of Revenue says that's not enough time to implement a new sales tax that's approved, not just for schools, but for anybody who implements a new sales tax. So the soonest it can be implemented is within 90 days of July 1st of 2025, which means if you go that it takes about 120 days to start getting dollars, it means you're looking at not getting dollars from this until October, November next year. So about a year later, if it were even approved at referendum. So if you went in the spring of 25, and that referendum date is on April 1st, I guess it is April Fool's, but and no joke, it's on April 1st. That would also mean an implementation date of July 1st. So really there's no difference in implementation date whether you go in the fall or you go in the spring. It's more about turnout at elections, having time to get the information out. You know, general elections generally have bigger, not generally, they do have bigger turnout than the spring elections. Okay, so what are the key takeaways from my presentation, and then I'll open it up to any questions that you might have. And this top point I've made a couple times already. You need unified support amongst the school districts in the county to be successful. And oftentimes, the first time you try, it won't be successful. And it takes, for most counties, most school districts in the counties, more than one attempt. Each school district individually has to educate its voters on how sales tax will be used. So that's a con, if you will, towards your traditional building bond referendum. When you do a building bond question, it's done by district, and that question is very specific as to what you use those dollars for. So there's education, if you will, in the ballot question. Somebody walks in the ballot box, they can get an idea of what you're gonna use this on if they vote yes. The sales tax, you saw the question. There's no information there telling them what you're gonna use it for. You have to educate to get the information out. This is, the third statement's not true for everybody, but anecdotally, the community seems to be more engaged with the process when you get them excited over projects that you might be able to do with the money. Belvedere is a perfect example where that's not a true statement, right? Because they're abating 100% of their taxes. So this is just a generalization with the third bullet point. And even if you're not going to use let's say you're a school district that needs to do capital projects, and your alternative to the sales tax is to do your traditional building bond referendum, they could still communicate to the public like, hey, we're not abating debt service, but if you don't approve this, we need to come to you with this capital need anyhow, so you're avoiding these sales tax, or you're avoiding these property taxes if you approve this. That's what that fourth bullet point is getting to. Now, when we do these presentations, a lot of times the conversation will come around, well, can this be a win-win for the taxpayers? Where if they approve this tax, do they potentially benefit from it? And you can't say that universally whether it's true or not, because it's gonna depend upon what the school district does with it. If they approve the sales tax and it's used all to support a bond issue, well, it means that person's gonna be paying higher taxes. If you use it to abate 100%, if you're doing like a Belvedere, and you use it to abate all the taxes, you still can't say people are gonna net benefit. It just depends on how much they buy, and how much sales tax they'd be paying versus their property tax avoidance. You can communicate those things and come up with examples, but you definitely cannot say universally that even if you abate all 100% of the tax, that every single property taxpayer is gonna benefit, because it depends on their spending habits and where they spend that money. Now, hopefully, you would think that in a county like you, that there could be an overall net benefit for most people, just because of that statistic that was derived earlier, that 42% would be paid by people that are non-residents. And those non-residents aren't paying property taxes. So that money you're collecting from those non-residents would benefit all your property taxpayers if you were to choose, for example, to abate everything. Okay, so this is my disclosure, and I'm not gonna read it to you. And so that's the entire presentation. So I'll now take questions that you might have. I know some of you have heard some of this before, so hopefully it was a good review for you.
For slide 9, when you give us the current sales tax rate in DeKalb County, I know it says it's from February 2nd. Now, just because I'm not sure of when the governor did it, is that 8% number with the 1% taken off, or is that with the 1% from the state still in there?
It's still in there because remember that only applies to certain purchases.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you were to buy a 2x4, you're just gonna pay 8%, you want that out. It just means now when you buy spaghetti, unprepared spaghetti, you don't pay 1%. Yeah.
And then when somebody purchases something online, would they be paying our sales tax rate, or are they just gonna pay Illinois' flat 6.25%?
They're gonna pay your sales tax rate. That was so about 3 years ago when they call it the Amazon tax came in, that's based off where you reside is what you pay.
Can I ask where this originated from? Why has this come about? Where did this originate from?
The whole sales tax
The
idea?
whole sales tax discussion.
For this county or just in general?
Yeah, for this county.
This county, we personally were invited by the regional offices of education to present to the administration level. And we, so I'm not sure which school district asked for that first, I can't tell you that for certain. And the dialogue, like I mentioned earlier, it's not just schools in DeKalb County are talking about, they're talking about Winnebago County, where Rockford could just put it on the ballot by itself. They're having dialogue out there, schools in Kane and Will, it just seems like for all, I don't know if herd mentality might be the right phrase, but like a lot of the northeast counties are now talking about this when they hadn't talked about it for years.
So Minerva, why would we entertain this when we have a very healthy fund balance? To me, going through this presentation, I see they need our support. The county needs our support because we're almost at 50%. So us, as no offense to you, you said if we did it and Sycamore did it, or if we did it and I don't have that slide up, Genoa, it would get at least put on the ballot. So I think in our community we have a healthy fund balance. We go through things talking about our community and wanting to support our community and not overtax our community. And we are thoughtful in our families and their spending. I think if we were hurting in our fund balance, this would be something we should entertain. But my opinion is, this is not something we should be entertaining for our community, for our individuals. I mean, yes, we would benefit from it, but you know what? In turn, the 40% of the people that come here for college, still all the residents will still get an increase in every time they go to the store. Every time you buy a new pair of shoes, you're gonna get that tax. And quarter adds up every time. And you've got a family of 5, you've got a family of 10. That adds up going out and spending money for people. So that's just my opinion.
All right, can I jump in on this?
Sure.
When I was on the board the second time, we brought this up. Because at that time, like in Champaign, it was a big thing for them, they were doing it, blah, blah, blah. There was just not enough support in the county to push it through. So I guess one of the things I would ask would be, would it help the taxpayers, like when they're real estate, that you did mention something, I'm no guru with numbers, so I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. Would it help them in a way where we wouldn't have to, when the tax levy subject comes around and it gets pretty hairy, would it help that situation? Yes or no?
Yeah, it could help the situation if you use the tax to abate, the sales tax to abate property taxes 100%. You're already abating a lot of those taxes. So just full transparency is if, right now we estimate the tax to be 4.8 million. If you weren't already abating property taxes, you could abate $4.8 million of your bond levy, and that would definitely be a win-win for almost all your property taxpayers. But because you're already abating a portion of your levy, do you know how much you're abating?
We have abated 16.7 million just on the tax year 2023, but.
In 1 year? Okay, yeah, so if you were to, if the tax were approved, you'd be using 1.7 million of it if you went for full abatement to abate the rest of your levy, and then the other 3.1 million you could use to abate levy, and that would free up 3.1 million to go back to the operating funds.
Can I jump in just, sorry, really quick, because this data is from us fiscal year 22. At that time, we did abate. Normally, our referendum bonds or our bond levy is about 7.7 million.
Okay.
So that 1.7 million is not a really good indication of how much is our normal tax levy before abatements. So, this is a new stream of revenue to kind of answer also the question this is a new stream of revenue, and it gives us an opportunity to continue abatements, to keep abating our tax levy, but also any new capital projects that are coming forward. I mean, we have needs with a new early learning childhood center. In addition, we also have aging capital needs for our buildings. So Tammy has a 5-year projection for facilities improvement. So this new stream of revenue kind of avoids us to keep increasing or replacing the need to go for a tax levy increase.
Right, I think that's the goal.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hurt the taxpayer.
Correct.
I like the idea if we got 50% of the people help paying this, if they're coming in from out of town, because we know at Northern, they have tons of activities out there in the Convo Center and whatnot. So I mean, that could, it's a lot of money generated by out-of-town people. Yeah, we got, what'd you say, approximately 42% in town?
Yeah.
So you're paying it one way, but are we saving it another way? Is it a wash or no? Or is it, where's the gain, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it just depends on the spending behavior of each individual household, one of the commonly known factors about sales taxes is considered a regressive tax, because people with lower income spend a higher percentage of their income on purchases, everyday needs and such. So that, and they're not likely to pay as much in property taxes. So if you're somebody on a lower income spectrum, you're probably going to be paying more than you were before if you're doing a full sales tax, property tax swap. And I think what you're getting to is, you're over there, is that if you ultimately need to do a project and your only choice regarding this tax is to do another property tax referendum, then this tax helps you avoid raising property taxes even more. And so it's really incumbent then on the school district to really study how it would use the tax and do some computations about the benefit potentially to average taxpayers.
All right, so let me ask you this. You had mentioned in there, like, let's say Genoa, for instance, they voted they wanted no part. But if you get 50% more like if us and Sycamore decide to do it, they're gonna get part of the revenue. So, I thought you mentioned earlier about one who is taking the revenue to pay off a debt.
In Belvedere.
In Belvedere, for instance, and let's just say we're in that same boat, we're gonna pay off a debt. Can we opt out of this program?
Yeah.
Or if you're in, are you in for the duration?
No, it's a decision by the board every year. I mean, using Belvedere again as an example, every fall they pass a resolution, take every penny they receive and use it to reduce the property tax levy on their debt.
And so if we get to the point where we know, hey, it's not helping our taxpayer, I mean, we're getting more money, but we're not helping them, this is not the way we thought it was gonna go, we want out.
Oh, yeah, no, you
That's
couldn't.
the referendum.
Yeah, yeah, it would be a
No.
Now you
referendum
go
to
to
get
the
out of it.
referendum again to get out of
Right.
that,
Once
And-
it's in place, it's in place.
until the referendum.
Unless every school didn't encumber debt. So for example, if Sycamore sold bonds 2 years after this was approved and pledged this as a tax to it, but then the rest of you can't put it on referendum to get rid of it because one school district's pledged it to repay a bond issue.
Then at that point, we could continue to, at that point, we can make the choice to abate the 100% of what we receive, right?
Right.
So let's say that we've already utilized those funds to pay off new construction or projects that we have, I apologize, constructions that we have currently in place, and we no longer need the funds or whatnot, then we can continue to utilize that money to add on to the 17.8 million that we already abate? 17 point,
Well, this year we did that abatement, I mean,
Right.
hopefully we.
right?
I don't know,
Well,
but
we can
yeah,
continue to
yeah,
add to the abatements, right, reducing, obviously, continuing to help our taxpayers with the support of those non-county taxpayers that add to that.
I was just gonna jump in just for our referendum bonds, which is our debt service levy, does expire in 12 years. So that's always a great thing to see that, you can have a plan, a 20-year plan that I would like to use this for capital projects until, maybe the referendum bonds expire and then move on to capital projects or move on to the increasing cost of our facilities budgets. So there is so much strategy you can use there in many areas, so.
What percentage are they asking for? Cause it's up to 1%.
That's what, that'd be up to us, right?
Yeah, it's up, the school districts have to somehow come to an agreement of what you would all wanna ask for.
So Minerva, has that been discussed? Because is this being voted on at next meeting?
So each individual school district is right now bringing it to their board. That was the
Okay.
commitment. So we would share this information with board and decide. At this point, the request is the 1%, but that's not to say that we can't come back and say, we'll do this as if, at 0.25 or 0.5.
Right,
Right.
so when this goes to vote, what it's saying is, if this is approved, we are okay with moving forward with 1%. That's what, I just wanna be clear that that's clear to the community, cause on the presentation, it doesn't state that. So I wanna make sure that that's clear to the community, that this is stating, when this moves for a vote for our board, that the idea is moving forward with 1% as of right now. That's what the county wants to do, if it's approved, to put it on the ballot.
That's what the
That,
county.
I just wanna be clear, cause it wasn't clear, so.
Yes, correct.
And then,
Oh, can I answer the question you asked before?
sure.
So, this came about because Sycamore came to us as a county of superintendents and asked if we could do this, right, that they have an interest in it.
Okay.
And then, they took it to the ROA and Amanda Christensen took that on. So she's leading on behalf of all of the superintendents. So individually, each superintendent and board members have been a part of meetings. Daisy and Chris have both attended, Chris 1 and Daisy 2 meetings, and we invited the mayor and the city manager to attend the last meeting as well, to gain information so that we are all on the same page. Then this meeting, we wanted to make sure that we had PMA here to explain if each one of the superintendents has given back information of whether likely or unlikely that they will be moving forward from their board, right? And so whether they took a straw poll or they just took consensus, each one of the superintendents has stated which way it's gonna go. And we're gonna wait to see what that looks like at the end of this month. And we're informing the ROE superintendent what that looks like, and then a decision will be made. Right, so anything that comes out from our board, I would share back with them to say, here are the questions, here are the nuances of what we're saying, what are we gonna do, and then together we'll make that decision and bring it back.
One more question, so if this moves forward and for some reason passes, which would be surprising, but this doesn't stop cities from changing their sales tax too. So the city of DeKalb could all of a sudden say they wanna, do an increase, so when we've moved from 8 to 9, they could say, oh wow, well, we're gonna go after some more, and we could be at 10% next year. It doesn't stop anyone else from asking for more,
They're
okay,
completely independent.
perfect. Cause there's a lot of people that watch, and this will be of interest to people, so I just wanna make that clear that if this was to move forward, there could be more toppled on top of that.
All right, another question. You had mentioned the mayor and the city.
Can you put your mic on? I'm sorry, thank you. Yes.
You had mentioned the mayor and the city manager. Have they been part of this conversation yet or no?
They were invited to be in discussion. We do have a meeting coming up Thursday where Chris and Daisy will be attending
Okay.
around tax in general.
Sure.
And we'll bring this up at that point as well.
Okay, good. I'd like to hear their input.
Yes, and I think just some, I guess, more clarifying things just for the entire board so that we can digest it more. The first thing that I wanna make is what we would be voting on is just to put it to referendum. We're not saying there's going to be
Sure,
a sales tax.
correct.
We're letting the voters decide if they would like a sales tax, cause we all know I'm the most anti-tax person on the planet, but I'm not the most hey, if the voters really feel like giving the school district an extra 1%, I'm not necessarily opposed to giving them that option. Now, two things that I will caveat is to Fred's question about whether we can get out. From the board members I've talked to from Sycamore, there's a pretty good chance that they will be pledging this money towards renovations at the high school almost instantly once they get it. So there's not gonna be a get out of jail card once this goes through. A lot of the other school districts already have plans for it.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
And then the other thing that I would just kind of highlight or point out, just from my reading of the numbers, even if, a large portion of those sales taxes are being consumed from people outside of the county, keep in mind that when people are spending money in DeKalb, because we are the largest population center, we are taking a lot of the money that is spent here and we are cutting checks to the rest of the county for it.
Yep.
And I don't know if you mentioned it, what is the percentage that the ROE takes off the top for administer the funds?
I think it's 1%. They have the ability to, they don't have to, they have the ability.
They will.
And again, as Chris mentioned, when we attended or when we were invited to attend this meeting with the ROE, it was with the intent of receiving this presentation, us asking questions, and then the second meeting was pretty much the same thing, bringing back, answering any, questions or providing answers to any questions that people have brought forth after the first presentation. So that is why we're here. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page and that we all received the same information, because Chris and I can only take in so much. But once everybody has questions, this at least allows everybody the opportunity to ask those questions. Okay. Any other questions for now? No. Thank you again for taking the time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to present. If there's follow-up questions you didn't think of, feel free to email and I can address them that way.
I was actually gonna ask that, if there are any follow-up questions, please feel free to send them to me, and I will gather them, and we'll send them over to PMA, so we can get response. Once we receive response, I'll share it with everyone across the board.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Perfect. And just to clarify too, the meeting that we have on Thursday, it is with the other taxing bodies. I know last year we had started the conversation sometime in May with Samantha McDavid was still the president. She attended the first meeting, and then I later on took, when I became the president, I attended the second meeting, the follow-up meeting, to discuss just different ways of, trying to collectively work on different efforts to reduce the taxes. So this year, we're starting the conversations again and again, hopefully.
I just wanna remind everybody too, inform you that at that point, the conversation was about reducing the city tax. Okay, so that's what the conversation had started off, and then it's veered into different kinds of things, right? So the clarification this time around will be around, again, the city tax and any other taxes. EAV has gone up again, and will continue to go up, and what is that gonna look like for us? And what does that mean, what will the district do in return? And then this, obviously, will bring this up also as a part of the conversation. So there's quite a bit of conversation that needs to happen, and this is going to be the first of many meetings that we'll have with city and other taxing bodies around us, okay?
And then again,
Is that
the
right?
hope, yes, of course, and again, the hope is to do that, because although throughout the years we have done a lot to try to create, do those approve those abatements, if we continue to abate, but everybody else continues to tap into the maximum amount of money that they qualify for, then sometimes that doesn't always, our abatements don't always show up as large as we would like them to be for our taxpayers. So we're just trying to work collectively to ensure that we are all on the same page and that we are all doing our due diligence to try to minimize or maximize the help that we can give back to our taxpayers and minimize, whatever costs we can on our ends as the taxing bodies that we see. Take in all the revenue that comes from taxpayers. So just again for clarity. All right. So consensus to bring this back?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Next thing on the item, it is item B, which is the parent-student handbook presented to us. By the team, the committee members that are here today, Dr. Larson and Mr. Brentford.
Yeah. I'd just like to make sure that we add that this is a committee that meets and is required to meet on a yearly basis, and both Brent Boyer and Dr. Donna Larson are here to present that as a technical component of the meeting, but also informational for everyone.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Don and I will tag team this, do our best to present the parent-student handbook update here, presentation. This is submitted by the committee, which we are part of the committee and have been for years. I have like 76, but good, I'm glad you're on that, good, it's been a long time. Anyway, we're here to help. So as Minerva said, this is something that we bring to every year. Donna, what is our why?
Again, so just like I said, it's evolving, it's a fluid document. Obviously, you understand, especially through the Press Plus that we have, and the IPA is the Illinois Principal Association model for student handbooks. Things change, things evolve, legislation always is changing. So basically, this provides stakeholders a shared place for the positive culture and some input on the climate with all the changes that occur. So we answer questions, we gather feedback from everyone, for parents and students, so that everyone has that clear expectation of what our handbook brings.
How did we get here, okay? Well, through Illinois School Code changes, through our board policy updates, these are the things we look at, and we use, we do use the Illinois Principal Association Model Handbook that they put out, which they make the changes that Illinois school law and code say that we need to change. So some of these, I think we have 5 updates this year, and 4 of the 5 are just to follow Illinois school code changes that you have to do. So there's nothing major.
And what's great about this committee is then we can have that common language of, this is the why. We're not making a change just solely like, this is how we got here.
And a few things there that we did tap into our legal counsel multiple times to go through some things that we wanted to make sure were vetted very thoroughly with multiple meetings to make sure that this adoption, that we weren't missing anything. That was a major one we did last year with the overhaul. This year is much more minor, but still tapping into that legal counsel was very beneficial again. As Minerva talked about, this is board policy. So that's why we're bringing it to you for this. The major updates, the 5 to 6, there's 5, but she's got a couple different ones in here. So you want to do a couple?
Sure.
Go ahead.
You can do the next couple.
I will.
Okay, so this language specifically talks about, uniforms and allowing just permission for the purpose of modesty. So just to go through with value, requirements of students' religion, cultural values, things like that, or just any modesty in general. So the language is clear. And then the AI plagiarism, more so for secondary level of our benefits. There's specific language now present because AI is so different and evolving, right, Ben?
It's very
So
prevalent what our kids are doing now. So we've always had plagiarism, but now there's a specific language to AI. Okay?
There hasn't always been plagiarism.
No, it hasn't. We've always
Mitigating
had
plagiarism.
language around it.
I'm just
There you go.
making sure.
Clarity.
Bring clarity, there you go.
Bring clarity.
Okay.
You wanna go that one?
Go for it, yeah. So there are some Title IX updates as of August 24th. Actually, a lot of us administrators took the actual updates that they had and the class that they offered. That was very good. So those changes are in here. It's new language. There's also language about visitors, their conduct within and without of our schools, and then school property was added to provide some specific guidelines here. So we do have some new language there. It's very helpful.
District tech acceptable use, made sure Ben had eyes on that policy. Then we go into personal technology, social media, just usage, conduct. It's revised obviously to meet the recent changes and requirements.
Then our racism-free school law requires the district to have policy in place by August 1st, 2024. That language is in our discrimination, harassment against the basis of race, color, and national origin is prohibited. So that is added into our handbook for 24-25.
Yep. What's next? Here we are.
So,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
where we are on this is it is out for Spanish and Arabic translation, because that is a long process. This is not a short document. So they have had it for weeks, and if there are any small tweaks, it's easier to tweak something in that Spanish and Arabic instead of, the whole document. So it is out for full translation, and then community-wide understanding and appreciation for this handbook and its contents.
It's a great process.
Any questions you guys have?
First, I want to thank you for doing this. They stepped in at the last minute to do this presentation, and I appreciate that. But you guys actually are kind of funny, so we should maybe do stuff more often.
No problem. We're here every
But I
Tuesday.
really appreciate it. So we'll open it up for
We'll
questions.
see you 2 Tuesdays a month.
Any
Okay.
questions?
Yeah, if anybody has questions, please feel free.
So we need a
Thank you.
recommendation to bring it back then? Or
Recommendation
we
to
need
bring it back.
approval, right? Oh,
No,
sorry.
There you go.
Well, thank you again. I'm actually part of this committee as well, so thank you for the work that went into it. It is actually a committee that is run by Ms. Parker, and then in collaboration with, the people that just presented. And then there's also a parent perspective and so forth, so like, there's a lot of voices in this community, and, it's always nice to see the collaboration happening, so thank you for the work that went into that. And do we have consensus to bring this back?
Yes.
All right, no questions, right? No, okay. All right, thank you. All right, the next item is item C, is Courageous Principals Leadership Development Program. This is an information item brought to us by Dr. Minerva Garcia-Sanchez.
Hello again. So this time of year, we would like to continue to provide professional development unilaterally and equitably across all of our schools and across cabinet. So at this time, we would like to be able to send approximately 26 individuals, new deans, assistant principals, and cabinet members to either Courageous Principals 1 or Courageous Principals 2 during the September 20th through 22nd of this year, and then the use of Title II monies to be able to fund that. So we would be very hopeful that the board would allow those individuals to be to attend. I've been told I cannot attend from Courageous Principals Deloitte. They are going to wait to have me help them with a level 3 and see how that looks. But again, I think it's imperative, and we can definitely have any of our principals sitting here or cabinet members that have attended to talk about how that has actually brought this district together and made us stronger. But we look forward to allowing them to attend. Questions?
Could we get a list of the attendees for next time when we vote on this, please?
I'm sorry?
Could we get a list of the attendees at some point?
Jackie, I think that's something that you can share with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any questions about that? No? All right, consensus to bring this back?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, the next item is the Press Plus 115 first reading. This is an information item submitted to us by Dr. Minerva Garcia-Sanchez.
So you heard Brent and Donna actually talk about the Press Plus. We have a first reading for a number of items that are at the 5-year mark. So it's for your review, and questions around any of those updates and amendments that are being made. As Shauna has obviously been taking a look at it and making sure that we are including it in our handbook and those kinds of things, and they'll be added eventually. You'll notice that at this time, the revisions to policies and administrative procedures and exhibits also includes components for the board. So there are components of your leadership that are being brought up, so things such as reimbursements or vacancies or any kind of flexibility that the board may have in regards to expense approvals and those kinds of things. But we also have items that are included across the district in general and how it's run. So this at this time, I'm offering it as a first read. At the next meeting, you'll be offered a second read if needed, and or be able to answer any of your questions. Okay, so this is the first offering, first read. Everybody, it's been shared with you to take a look at.
Would you, if you're not ready for it tonight, that's my bad, because I did not go through and reread all of this before the board meeting, but for library media resources, where it states that schools that want to be eligible for library grant funding have to adopt a policy that essentially states that we will not regulate or ban books. Do you know, is that tying our hands then to make sure that material that may not be appropriate for students is being kept out of libraries? Or now can someone take, just for example, a magazine from a company like Playboy and say, this is a media item and you cannot ban it from your school?
So yes, Sarah and or Billy.
I think that's a little extreme, Chris.
And then of course Shauna is available.
There's a lot of books
to
that are
answer
pretty
any
extreme
questions
that
as
are in
such.
schools right now.
Go ahead.
I'll take a punt with it. What is deemed as appropriate is a very far and wide description. Each one of us could come up with something different on what is appropriate and not appropriate. Our library assistants work with our district librarian to vet what is in our libraries, to make sure that it is accurate information, to make sure that it is age-appropriate information, but also not limiting. You know, we might have a kindergartner that wants to read a middle school level book on dinosaurs. We don't want to, you know, limit our students' access to information and their interests. So it's a very careful balancing act. And our district level librarian works with Billy and I and our humanities managers, Betsy and Jill, to also look at what are our available resources for our students. Did I answer that?
Is there a specific
Do we have
question?
Playboy at our elementaries? I can say clearly no, we do not.
Not the secondary either.
No, at secondary either, thank you, Brand.
I guess my concern, I'll just go straight for it instead of dancing around it. How do I make sure that books that have genitalia are not getting into kindergarten, first, second, third grade because they're arguing it under the guise of, hey, well, this is just that body part, but if you don't agree with having that body part, you can have this body part. Like, how do we make sure that our kindergartners and stuff aren't being exposed to those kind of things?
I will call upon Billy, who handles elementary. I can say at secondary, we do have books that have different genitalia and different things, you know.
Hey, thanks, partner.
You're welcome. Tag, you're it.
So with the adoption of the national sex education standards, right, we are educating our students. Doesn't mean that they're gonna see pictures of genitalia and stuff like that. But like Sarah said, there is a process that we go through. So we don't approve, a lot of the money for our libraries go through our Title I grant. So Gina, who works at the high school and then works with our media center assistants, a lot of those go through us, our humanities managers and ourselves. So we're not just gonna provide money and say, here's a free-for-all and buy whatever you want. We are still overseeing. And not only that, curriculum council oftentimes sees things that are new, and you as well in the purchase order approvals that you see every so often. So once a month, I think, and hopefully twice a month soon.
And I would say to that, in conjunction with what Billy added, it's important that we have resources available to our students that reflect all of our diversity. So that's important to us as we make decisions. So we make sure that books are in different languages, that have different ethnicities and different gender roles. So it is important that our students are exposed to who they are and who their homes are like. Just as I can remember in my own youth, the word divorce was taboo, and we don't talk about that. We don't show pregnant women on TV that are out of wedlock. We're past that.
Any other questions? Alright, so first reading, if you have any questions, you can always thank you again. You can direct your questions to Dr. Garcia Sanchez, and then if need be, we will get a second reading, otherwise we will approve at the next meeting.
I think that's a great idea that I just popped in as you're saying that. If you're reading this and you think of a question, don't wait until next meeting. Shoot it over to me, and then I can get those answers and we can put up an FAQ. Shauna will definitely help us to put something together, very efficient young lady that will make sure that we answer your questions and have that information for you for the next meeting. And then any additional questions you may bring, we'll answer while we're here. Okay? Yeah. Thank you.
Alright, consensus to bring this back? Yes? Alright, thank you. Alright, item E, Skyward Conference. This is brought to us by Ms. Deidre Salas.
Good evening. So the district just went through a huge transition from Skyward 2.0 to cumulative. Skyward is our student data system that also, student management system that also includes our HRIS system, as well as many other functions. Annually, we do have staff that go to the Skyward Conference, but this year we have a larger need because everyone needs to know how to work cumulative. Some functions are the same, some are similar, but our platform looks very different. So we want to make sure that all of our users have the tools that they need to be successful in the work that they do. So we are seeking approval to take 17 staff members to the Skyward Conference being held in Wisconsin at Wisconsin Dells. The date is October 20th through the 22nd. It's a total of 17 staff members for a total cost of approximately $14,211.38 to be paid out of the Title II grant.
Teacher, I just want to make sure, will there be a second request? Not everybody is going to be attending that one.
Thank you, yes. There's actually 2 Skyward conferences, which is to our benefit because we can't take all of our staff out of the district. So this request is for 17, and this is the one that happens out of state. The other conference is in-state, and it will service our other staff members that need to attend. And this is for our FDAS secretarial members and office assistants, which are part of DFSA.
Questions?
Can we get a list of attendees, please?
Can we clarify, it's only building FDAS? So the elementary, it's only the building FDAS members?
The people attending are our school building FDAS members, and those are also where our office assistants are, and we can get you a list. Yep.
Any other questions? All right, consensus to bring this back?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, item F, 2024-2025 sub rates and minimum wages. This is an information item brought to us by Ms. Beatrice Alice. Yes,
Is that right?
Okay.
So annually, again, we bring this to the board because there's been over a 4-year period of time that the state of Illinois has increased the minimum wage. So starting January 1st, 2025, minimum wage is $15. Our practice has always been to make that effective July 1st, prior to the year in which it takes effect, so that we're not changing pay rates in the midst of the school year. So this includes our sub rates, which vary based on position. It includes our hourly rates for our hourly employees. And new to this document, it includes our special event staff and extracurricular staff. So we know we have a lot of extracurricular events, whether it's athletics or the arts or some of our club activities, but we also have a lot of rentals in the district. To make those function properly, we need staff members to work in the capacity of security, taking tickets, we can go on and on and on. So in that role, we've always had a lot of varying pay rates. We want to streamline that so that staff know what they're being paid at all times, so that it is a pay rate that makes people want to work and support the needs of the district. And we are requesting that all of our staff members outside of DCTA are paid a rate of $24 an hour. Our DCTA members per the contract will be $28 or what is reflected in the contract. And then our facilities plan also dictates that there is someone who serves as a manager for our larger events, and that is at a rate of $30 an hour. So these are the rates we are recommending to bring back to you for approval at the next meeting.
Questions? No questions? All right, consensus to bring this back?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, item G, bid results, transition program, Charter Street location. This is an information action item brought to us by Ms. Tammy Carson.
Thank you. As we discussed back in February, we went out to bid for the renovations at the transition building located over on Charter Street. And we did collect bids. Our overall budget, if you remember, for acquiring the building as well as construction in this project is $1.5 million. With the bids that were collected, we had several alternates that were put forth because we wanted to make sure we were able to stay within our budget and provide some flexibility in this project. And some of those items could be managed by our in-house staff. We did opt to bring forth the only alternate one, which is the building of an additional handicapped ramp in the front of the building. We already had one slated in the base budget for the back, but alternate one has the ramp in the front. The other items we are recommending that we do reject those other alternates 2 through 6. And then it brought in the total cost of this project, which includes a contingency of $50,000, architect and engineering costs and civil fees to $1,103,640. There is also included in that still some cushion of about 12,000 to get us to that 1.5, as well as an allowance in there built in for soil remediation in the event, as I've seen in some other projects, that may be necessary. So that's included also. So I'm bringing this forth for approval, information and approval tonight to approve the bid so we can start this project, and we're able to plan to be moved in starting in December so that we can occupy the building with our students as of January.
Any questions?
So if we did all of the alternates, what would that put the total budget at?
Let me do this math really quick. Let's see. We would be exceeding that budget. We would be over by approximately $29,000 roughly if we accepted all of the alternate bids over the 1.5. That would still be including the 50,000 contingency in there, so we would be under if we don't use all the contingency, but obviously we wanna have a little bit of a cushion just in case. And that does include the 7,500 for the allowance.
Any other questions? No? All right. Chris, no more questions? All right. This is an action item. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the base bid for the renovation of the transition building on Charter Street in the amount of $899,000 and an alternate number 1 in the amount of $66,500 to Gerke, is that how you say it? Gerke Construction in DeKalb, Illinois. It is recommended that the Board of Education reject alternate number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Amanda Harness,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Ariel Owens.
Yes.
Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
Daisy Ramirez.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item H, Verkada One Security Conference. This is an item brought to us by Ms. Tammy Carson.
And Matt McIntyre, Security Manager, who was not able to be here tonight. What we're bringing forth tonight is an informational item requesting for attendance at the Verkada One Security Conference, which is going to be in September in Denver, Colorado. This conference, we've been working with Verkada in regards to several of our technology devices, including our vape detectors, our camera systems, our card access. We are launching it. We have tested it in some of our buildings with the vape detectors and the cameras, and we are looking to utilize it at the new elementary, at Mitchell Elementary. But there are other options out there, and there's other things we need to be exploring and considering for future use in our district and future consideration of projects. So this conference will give some information out that we may not be able to get without attending. So we're bringing it forward as an informational item to attend the conference. The total amount, estimated amount, is approximately $3,500, which would be paid out of the safety and security budget.
Any questions about that?
Can we get a list of attendees? I'm just kidding.
Any other questions? No? All right, consensus to bring this back?
We do.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, did I just, I apologize. Okay, superintendent report, who's next?
So I got to talk a lot this time around, so here, I'm gonna wrap it up, really quickly. So keep up with me. This is, it's gonna sound like who's on first base, you know, that whole who's on first kind of thing. All right, so we have a few movements that are occurring at the administrative level, and I just wanna make sure that everybody is clear. I already let you know that with Mitchell, we're gonna hold off on selecting an assistant principal for now. Here we go. So ever at the high school, Melinda Cattell was selected as the principal at Kalen. I let you guys know that the last time we were together. at this point, Rick Davis, who is the principal of Little John, has interviewed and has been offered the position as assistant principal. The assistant principal position that he will take is the one that currently or had been belonged to Sarah Jennings. And Sarah Jennings will now move into the Melinda Cattell position, which is a teaching and learning component. Got it? There's a quiz afterwards. So we have a principal at the elementary school level, moving to an assistant principal position at the secondary level. It's operations.
Operations and student services.
Thank you very much. And the assistant principal that's currently in that position will move into teaching and learning.
Correct.
Yes?
Got it.
All right.
Got it.
So now at Little John, what we're going to be doing, and I think Billy and Deidre they're working it out, they're working the magic.
We have already done it.
Okay, so a survey was created based on a survey we used in the past to determine how the staff within the building wants us to proceed, right? So if we would request that a minimum of 80% of the staff within the building says that they want the current assistant principal, let's say, to become the principal, with an 85% saying that that's what they want, then the district, in this case, will move that assistant principal into the principal role, right? So, is that right? Did I say that correctly?
We may, there will still be a conversation.
Of course, yeah, so there is a conversation, those kind of things. But this again goes back to, we're doing a pipeline, right? We wanna make sure that our staff is being trained, that they're staying within the district, that we're moving them through so that there's consistency in the work that's happening in the schools, and that we don't lose the momentum that a principal would have, completed, and upon his or her move, then it stops. So having the assistant principal be able to move in would be great. And then my hope is that a dean or a lead teacher will take on the assistant principal job, right? So that will continue to happen. So basically, that's what I wanna say. First, who's on second, everybody know, clear. And we hope that it'll be smooth sailing. For those of you that are out there watching, that are at Little John, please look out for that email, that survey. We would love to have you answer that. We would love to see you be able to answer that by Friday, because we would like to have that information so that we can move forward intentionally with what it is that you're asking us to do. Okay, that's it. Questions? Good, wonderful. Thank you so much. That's it for me. Back to you.
Well, congratulations to the people that have moved on to the positions and taken on different roles. Thank you for staying with the district, and best of luck to the people that have moved on to other opportunities. So with that said, it is now 7:27, and with that, we will call the meeting to adjourn the meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Have a great night. Be safe out there.